Diabetes technology designers need to know that our technology is personal. People with diabetes carry our devices on us all the time. We use our devices multiple times per day. Like it or not, our technology becomes a part of us. One thing that I dislike about the current designs is how impersonal it all feels. I can adapt my other pieces of technology to reflect my personality. For example, my phone reflects my favorite color, my iPod makes it easier for me to exercise, and it's not just the outside of the devices. I can adjust the apps to fit with my needs and my wants depending on the situation. My technology works for me, not the other way around. If I can upload my pictures and music, documents, and every other piece of data to the cloud, why can't I do the same with my diabetes technology?
It doesn't matter where I go or what I'm doing. My diabetes was there with me, and so was my blindness. Forward-thinking companies have made a lot of technologies accessible to those who are blind. For example,
I use the iPhone, and Apple has made it completely accessible. When I plug in an earphone at a Bank of America ATM, it talks to me while I get out my cash. My talking blood pressure meter helps me keep my pressure in check.
Your blood pressure is 123/76.
And of course, I couldn't live without my Prodigy voice.
Thank you for using Prodigy Voice.
unfortunately, the story of diabetes technology and blindness kind of ends with the blood glucose meter. The meter's been around now for decades, and there's always been an accessible blood glucose meter. You know, I looked expectantly for being able to use a pump when they came out, but the pumps have been around now for decades also, and there's never been a pump made that's accessible to the blind. It's interesting to note that diabetes is the leading cause of blindness and low vision among people ages 20 up to 70. When you hear that statistic, it's got to make you wonder and ask the question, do diabetes technology companies have a blind spot?
The first time I went to buy insulin at the pharmacy, they refused to sell me just 1 or 2 insulin pens because they came in big packs of 5 only. And they wanted me to pay 5 months worth of copay for it, which really adds up. My insulin pen reservoirs are too big for me, and I usually wind up throwing away about half a pen's worth of insulin each month. And if I ever decide to get a pump, my reservoir will probably never be filled more than halfway. I know I'm not the only one who has low insulin doses. I worked as a counselor at a diabetes camp, and a lot of the kids don't need the enormous pump reservoirs either.
For one thing, I want my diabetes devices to talk and interact with each other and with my non-diabetes devices, like my phone. For example, sometimes the alarm on my Dexcom doesn't even wake me up if I go low during the night, but I often use my iPhone as an alarm clock. It'd be great if the Dexcom low alert could trigger an alarm on my phone to ensure I wake up. Diabetes devices should also integrate with social media. Nothing helps me cope with a less than desirable blood glucose reading, or a day or week of such readings, better than sharing my frustrations with other people with diabetes online. All my diabetes technology should seamlessly integrate with social media. I should be able to tweet a BG Now from my meter or upload a CGM graph directly to Flickr. And now, what about feedback? I want to see diabetes devices providing more feedback based on the data they're already collecting about our insulin intake and blood glucose.
If we could only have a glucometer that have an alarm in there, that when it's before and after lunch it ring, and then when the numbers are high, it's have an alarm that say you're high, and when it's low, it says you're low. Don't be afraid to make the glucometer bigger with a bigger number, so the people that cannot see very well can look at it.
The first thing that would really help me is biometric device standardization. Blood glucose meters all use different strips, and they don't have a common standard for being able to connect them to the cloud or to my computer to share information. They come with clunky cords, and I have to figure out what kinds of strips I need to use, and those two things make it more complicated to use blood glucose meters. The second thing that would make life simpler is a personal health cloud. But I don't want you to call it my personal health cloud. I want my 80-year-old mother to be able to take advantage of the idea of her information being shared at her discretion to manage her control. The third thing that goes hand in hand with the cloud is control. Enable me to share the information that I wish to share with the people I want to share it with at the time I want to share it. The fourth thing is help me be a part of my care team, not be a subject of my care team. So if we have these great things, like data that's at our fingertips and data that we can share with our healthcare providers, it makes sense to make the systems and the processes for healthcare providers more supportive of them being proactive and including me as part of my care team.
So many of us lead very active lives, and it's so important that we can trust that our pumps or other diabetes devices are going to withstand basic pressures of everyday life. I'm not talking about dropping it specifically, although I know that sometimes happens, but recently I wore mine in my bra for the day. While this isn't an absolutely odd experience, it was quite hot, and by the end of the day, this is what happened. Thankfully, we have great warranties for this, and I am able to trade it in, but it would also be nice to know that I don't have to live without my insulin pump for a day.
There are so many things to keep track of in order to stay healthy. All of the technology I need, blood sugar meter, pump, strips, batteries, insets, pump caps, battery caps. There's so much. Over 20 years, you have to stay fresh, keep learning and keep relearning the ins and outs of diabetes. I need to be connected in order to do this. I want my record and my health data in my hands. I want it with me when I move countries, when I change doctors, when I change devices, and when I change services. What I dream about is connectivity between the amazing technology that we have, between all of the people who are blogging and talking about living with diabetes. I dream about not being alone in the fight. I want connection between the services, doctors, products, and institutions. I want connection between my devices, between the people I know, and between other people who have diabetes. And I believe that the most important part of this is having a connection between my own data and myself. I believe that this would help me have a stronger connection to myself and to my future. This is what I work for as a designer, and this is the broad scope of what I ask for from the pharma and other designers. We can't do it alone, so let's do it together.
Number one, consider what we could do to speed up innovation. When you look at the technology landscape over the last 5 or 6 years, that speed of innovation is quite different in the Apple and Microsoft and software areas as it is compared to devices, meters, pumps, etc. I'm aware of the FDA regulatory process, but maybe there's things we can do to improve the speed and the innovation as part of that process. Secondly, I would ask what we could do about integration. Apple and Microsoft, for example, in the technology space, have developer conferences where there's API and easy ways for everything to work together. It benefits the consumer as well as the manufacturer and helps everybody realize the full potential of the tool.
It's important to know that diabetes wasn't always something that I wanted to advertise, especially as a self-conscious adolescent. This desire to keep my diabetes under wraps continued into adulthood. And even as a physician who knew the health benefits that a pump could bring me, I couldn't get past the idea that it would be a permanent fixture on me and one that wasn't easily concealed or modifiable. And it was for this reason that I put up with shots until 6 weeks ago. That's right, I've only been on an insulin pump for 6 weeks. But once I came around, it didn't take me long to love it. Which of these things is unlike the other? Measuring tape? A dog leash? Or an insulin pump? Now, if you guessed the insulin pump, you'd be right. Why do people who embark on home improvement projects and long walks with their dogs get a better perk than I do when trying to manage my diabetes? So my dream diabetes enhancement is a simple one: retractable tubing. But really, the idea that retractable tubing represents is flexibility. I can move my pump whenever and wherever I want. Based on what I'm wearing, I can put it in my pocket, put it in my bra, strap it to my leg. It can stay tucked away, and I really think that the tubing should be able to stay tucked away with it. So, Mr. and Mrs. CEO, please understand that I want people to see me, not my diabetes. In a disease that poses so many unyielding rules on us, we want things to be as flexible and modifiable as possible. So, my diabetic wish list is a long one. I want smaller, barely there devices. I want great technology that motivates difficult adolescents like the kind I was. And I want everything to be needle-free. But being able to let the non-diabetic side of me shine through bigger and brighter than the diabetic side, that's my number one wish. But who's counting? Actually, we're counting. The diabetics, the doctors, the diabetic doctors. We're counting on you.